At some point in your life, in a hospital corridor, or standing over a grave, or lying awake at 3 in the morning, the question arrives: is there anyone there? Most modern people already have an answer. They did not reason their way to it, they absorbed it from a culture where one answer feels intelligent and the other feels embarrassing. The question didn't go away, though. Here is the assumption the secular age runs on: God does not exist. The universe is a physical system operating without intention or purpose. Human beings are temporary arrangements of matter. Consciousness is what the brain does, and morality is what evolution and culture produced. Death is the end. That is not a conclusion that most people reach. It's an atmosphere most people absorbed. And the difference between a conclusion and an atmosphere is a conclusion has been argued for. An atmosphere simply surrounds you until you mistake it for reality. The confidence is louder than the arguments. It's easy to dismiss the argument for God if the only version you hear is the one serious philosophers aren't debating. The popular version atheists would like you to hear is religion claims a supernatural being in the sky who intervenes when asked or gets offended when ignored. Science explained the world without him. Therefore, he almost certainly doesn't exist. That's a coherent argument. It is also aimed at a target that serious theology abandoned years ago. The God that philosophers across the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions have argued for is not a creature above the clouds, not a being who tinkers with physics. The actual claim is this: something has to be holding existence up, something that cannot not be there. Because if it weren't, there would be nothing at all: no space, no time, no matter, no laws of physics. The philosopher David Bentley Hart: God is not a supreme being. God is being itself. The reason there is something rather than nothing. That question has never been answered by pointing at evolution or the Big Bang. Those describe processes inside existence. They say nothing about why existence is here. The God of popular atheism probably doesn't exist. Nobody serious is arguing for him. The other question is still open. Look at the other side, not whether God exists, but what you are actually signed up to if he doesn't. If there is no God, then everything, every particle, every law of physics, every human mind, every experience of beauty or love or moral outrage came from nothing, for no reason, by processes that are themselves unexplained. The universe just is. Consciousness is an accident of matter that learned to think about itself. The mathematical laws the universe runs on, which the creatures who evolved inside it can somehow read and understand, that is a coincidence. All of that might be true, but it is not obvious. It requires its own act of faith. The faith that if you follow every explanation back far enough, you reach something with no explanation, something that just exists for no reason from nothing. The philosopher Gottfried Leibniz asked this plainly in 1714. Nobody has answered it since. Why is there something rather than nothing? Not why is the universe this way, why is there a universe at all? The secular assumption is not that this question has been answered, it is that the question doesn't need to be. There is one more thing that worldview requires you to accept. If there is no God, no foundation beneath reality, then moral facts don't exist. Not really, not the way physical facts exist. You can say cruelty is wrong, you will mean it. The conviction will feel as solid as anything you know, but if there is no God, what you are expressing is a preference, evolved, culturally reinforced, genuinely felt, but still a preference. The universe does not contain the wrongness of cruelty the way it contains hydrogen. It carries no instructions, no judgments, no obligations. So when you look at genuine evil, not something you dislike, but something that makes you reach for words like wrong or monstrous or inexcusable, and you say, that was wrong, full stop, regardless of what anyone thought, you are making a claim that worldview cannot support. Most people make it anyway, every day, without noticing. Every time you feel real moral outrage, not I find that distasteful, but that was wrong. You are borrowing from a framework the secular worldview has already taken apart. That does not prove God, but it does open a crack. When a worldview cannot make room for something its own believer cannot bear to give up, that worldview deserves to be questioned. The universe should not be here. Not this one, not one capable of producing stars, chemistry, life, and minds that can ask why. The numbers that govern physics, the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, the rate at which the universe expands, are calibrated to extraordinary precision. Adjust any of them fractionally, and the universe becomes sterile, no stars, no chemistry, no life. Cosmologists call this fine tuning. They disagree about what it means. They do not disagree that it is real. The secular answer is the multiverse. If there are infinitely many universes, each with different constants, then one like ours will eventually appear by chance. That may be possible, but it is also entirely untestable, and it explains the one universe we can observe by appealing to an infinity of universes we cannot. The man who spent 50 years as the most prominent atheist philosopher in the English-speaking world looked at this evidence late in his career and changed his mind. Not through emotion, not through a crisis of faith, through the numbers. His name was Anthony Flew. He didn't find God in a hospital. He found him in the physics. Every human society that has ever existed believed in something beyond the visible world. Every single one. Across every continent, every era, every level of technological development, from cave paintings to cathedrals, from ancient Mesopotamia to medieval Japan, human beings oriented themselves towards something transient. They built temples, conducted rituals, buried their dead with care for what might come next. The secular view requires you to believe that every human being who lived before roughly the 18th century was suffering from a systematic delusion, that the universal human instinct pointing toward something beyond the material was pointing at nothing. It might have been. Majorities can be wrong. But this secular assumption treats this as obvious, as not requiring explanation, as something you can simply note and move past. That is a very large thing to move past. The question is not whether the majority was right. The question is what they were all responding to, independently across thousands of years without comparing notes. That response does not disappear by being ignored. Physics can describe everything that happens in your brain when you see the color red. It cannot explain why it looks like anything at all. There is a difference between the mechanisms behind an experience and the experience itself. Science can map the mechanisms in astonishing detail. The neurons firing, the signals moving, the brain regions lighting up. but the experience remains unexplained. Why is there something it feels like to be you? Why is the universe not simply dark processing, information moving, systems reacting, matter arranging itself with no inner life attached at all? The philosopher David Chalmers called it the hard problem of consciousness. It is not a gap that more neuroscience will close. It is a question about the nature of reality itself. If matter is all there is, inner experience should not exist as something over and above the physical processes. And yet here you are, experiencing. Even secular philosophers acknowledge the problem is real. Thomas Nagel, not a theist, not moving towards religion, argued that materialist accounts of the mind are almost certainly false. He followed the argument and reported what it showed. Your inner life is a data point. The question is, what is it evidence of? Is there anyone there? Most people answered that question in an atmosphere of confidence that felt like the end of an argument, without ever being one. It felt like what educated people thought, what science implied, what only the naive still wondered about. But say it plainly, that worldview commits you to a universe with no reason to exist, no intention behind it, no real foundation for the moral convictions you cannot bring yourself to drop. It asks you to set aside the hardest question, why is there anything at all, without answering it. It requires you to treat the physics as a coincidence, the human record as a delusion, and your own inner experience as a problem to be explained away. None of that makes God real, but it means the dismissal was always softer than it sounded. The question was never closed. It was only treated as if it had been.